Yeah, so share. Have you got that bit?
Hey,
How are
yeah,
you, mate?
I'm very well, man. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a real pleasure. And I was reading your notes earlier that you've toured with Lana Del Rey, Emily Sanders, one of my favourites, Katie Tunstall, and of
Mm.
course Paloma Faith. And your career started at a real young age, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, technically, I'm still on my gap year. Like, I was actually meant to be going to uni to read English. I think it was Warwick I got accepted into. I've been saying that for years, but actually, it might have been that might be a lie now. I can't actually remember. But insert good university here. Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, I love books. I love writing. My brother Benga in particular. We're both sort of sci-fi geeks, and I thought I was gonna potentially be a writer because I didn't really see how you could make doing music a job. I wasn't really thinking of it necessarily that way. But while on this gap year, I was sleeping on my brother Benga's couch, and he was playing bass guitar. So my brother Benga Adelekan, he's also in a band called Metronomy, and I was sleeping on his couch, and he was playing for this indie singer songwriter called Jeremy Walmsley at the time, and he was like, "Look, you're not really doing anything. I can't do this tour." It was like coming up. It was like November 2007 or something like that. I can't do this tour. Try out and see if you can cover me for this tour. And I did. And sort of, very long story short, I'm still on my gap year.
That's an amazing story. So, where did you grow up?
I've kind of grown up all over the place, but I was born in Nigeria. My dad's Nigerian. My mum's Kenyan. Um, and they met at Manchester University, so it's sort of already kind of a bit of a mad one. Um, but yeah, born in Nigeria, moved to Holland when I was two. So like my first memories of the world are actually in Holland. So this like big Nigerian family in sticking out in Den Haag. Um, Youngest of six kids. Uh, but yeah, grew up in Holland for a bit. Then I moved back to Nigeria when I was six. Um, Moved here when I was nine. Then I did my sixth form in Ecuador and moved back. So I kind of have been training to be a touring musician, sort of, I guess, um, forever. Because yeah, we moved around a lot, and uh, I like to think that that's been a sort of real strength. I think I'm kind of all right with being in new situations, being around new
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Yeah,
And was music always in your blood growing up?
I mean, it pretty much couldn't be more in my blood. So my mum's a musician. She studied music. She had a brief. She started a career. I think she was doing music for like a Nigerian on like a Nigerian TV station. I think on NTA or something. But she learned music. She actually taught my dad a few guitar chords. Um, but used to sing as a family. Uh, like it grew up in a Christian family, so we obviously go to church every weekend. But Monday to Saturday, we'd meet as a family every evening, read the Bible, pray. But we had the songbooks from church, and just from different sort of Christian songbooks, and we'd sing as a family every night, all eight of us. This was in Holland, in like three-part harmony, which I was just learning. I didn't really know. I didn't get any sort of necessarily formal teaching that, oh, this is a third and this is a fifth and this is a seventh, this is a ninth. But I could just hear my brothers and sisters doing it and my mum doing it. So I was learning to hear these things and to sing, as I was learning to walk and to speak. And we'd perform as a family, sometimes in church on Sundays, and my mum would arrange these parts for us. So yeah, it was, and there was constant, like, my parents didn't listen to any secular music, but there was constantly like Christian music or like choral music, quite sort of chamber old school stuff, all the way up to like contemporary for whenever the time was, uh, sort of Christian music. But then my brothers and sisters, yeah, we'd all listen to, you know, whatever. So from like my oldest brother was like into like Naughty by Nature, but then my sister would be into like the pop stuff, and it's quite a cool mix, I'd say. But yeah, it was always in me.
Beautiful, mate. I mean, my influences when I was young, one of my heroes back in the day was Level 42.
Nice, yeah, one of
Oh,
the best bass
him.
players, man.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And he used to hold his bass guitar quite high, and he
yeah,
used
yeah,
to
yeah.
thump against the strings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a slap, one of the most proficient slap bass players. Like he used to, like if you watch videos of him, his thumb is taped up because it's just constantly going. It's really, really difficult to do what he does. Really hard.
Yeah. So, what sort of guided you to the bass guitar? Because for anyone that doesn't know yet, and I didn't say it in the beginning, was you the bass guitarist for the Gorillaz, which is
Yeah.
they are amazing. I when Damon Albarn came out with them years ago, I just loved them straight away. Their style is fantastic.
Mate, me too. I mean, because I was 12 when Gorillaz came out, so
Yeah,
it's like it's pretty mad for me thinking that I was a fan of the band and now I sort of play in it.
yeah,
But yeah, I played bass with Gorillaz and with Damon in his solo projects as well.
yeah,
But and so like I said, I mentioned my brother Benga. He was the bass influence in my initial sort of foray into bass. I was playing a bit of guitar. This was when I was around 13. Because like I said, my dad plays, so I learned a few chords off him. And my mates were starting a band, so I started sort of getting involved in that. Just like sort of skate punk, sort of kind of angsty teenage stuff, obviously. But he was playing bass, and he played with quite an interesting style. So it wasn't necessarily very traditional. He was playing lots of chords and lots of strumming, and it was always quite interesting. And I'd always like sneak a little go, not sneak actually, it wasn't hidden, but I'd have a go on his guitar quite a lot. And again, my first professional gig was on bass, even though at the time I didn't even necessarily think of myself as a bass player. But it started when I started working with Damon. He kind of encouraged me a lot, and just discovered that I just was really expressing myself. In fact, the phrase he said to me, which kind of changed it, was like, "Mate, you're really expressing yourself on that instrument." And then like it's just like, "Oh right, maybe I'm a bass player in a guitarist body." Like I'm really, really feeling this. And now actually, I find myself being able to just express what's in my head a lot easier on bass than guitar, which is something that I've kind of been playing for longer, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So every single guest that I have on my podcast,
Mm.
they say it all came with the line of work, my drinking, right?
Yeah,
Whatever they are, estate
yeah,
agents,
yeah,
you know, musicians
yeah.
and drinking.
Mm.
Like, I think you listened to James' podcast last week from Death Havana.
Mm.
And when I was recording it, he said to me, and I really had to hold my nerve with it. He said that he was singing live on stage, and the guitarist went up to him and said, "Mate, the mic's 10 foot over
Oh,
there."
that hit me like a brick. Because I mean, it's so mad because there's so many gigs that I've seen that I cannot remember.
Yeah,
Like great footage. And that's not to say that I necessarily always played pissed, but I've sort of missed out on like half of my career because I was just out of it. And the problem, actually, one of the problems with my drinking and drug use, etc., is like I could always play well. So I was never a really messy, abusive, angry, blackout drunk. I was always personable and I could always hang out, etc. The dark thing about my drinking and my just abuse in general was like I'd actually be okay at work, but my life was in absolute pieces.
yeah,
And I could perform as if my life was all right, but I'd be spending $1,000 a week on cocaine and not being able to pay rent like for
yeah,
months and months and months, ducking and diving my brothers and like stealing off my missus. Do you know what I mean? Like all this shady shit, but in my head, it almost made like justified it for me. It's just like, yeah, well, I can still do my job, so
yeah,
I must be all right, or it must be all right. But that's the thing about drinking in particular with music. I think people sort of recoil from drugs, like, because it seems like an obvious thing to sort of be wary of. But with drinking, I think like way back from like my first gigs, I remember there just being like beer, like either being like we was sort of 14, 15 when we were playing our first shows at like, this was my skate punk band called Autofed. It's playing at the Tunbridge Wells Forum. Big up all the people from Bromley. Like, but you get like a little rider, even though you're like so underage. But you'd immediately associate playing with drinking from the beginning. And it's sort of seen as cool. It's so part of it that it's so sort of accepted. And even though you've seen so many car crashes and I mean, my goodness, some of the biggest heroes like Keith Richards and stuff like that are famous for being wrecks.
Yeah.
Like, but you're still drawn to it and you're still attracted to it. Yeah, it's really easy to have bad habits in the music industry.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to someone else, Jack from Tova, the band Tova, and he says, when you're young and you're going to practice and that, you're stoned and you're drunk, and it's almost like a trophy, isn't it? When you can play well, when you're wrecked, and
Yeah. No, it is. It's again, I always had this thing with sort of almost like perfection. It's like if my playing was all right, then I must be all right.
yeah,
Which is one of the mad things. Like we're probably going to get onto it properly later, but it was one of the mad things about going to rehab, which I did like a 10-month residential rehab, which was amazing but brutal at the same time. Like I couldn't touch a guitar, any musical instrument for the first 16 weeks.
wow,
Which was the longest I hadn't played music since I could play music, which is basically my whole life. So I'm suddenly, the thing that gives me value, or the thing that makes me seem like, even though that my world is burning down, that thing that makes me seem all right is taken away. I can't hide behind it anymore. And I had an absolute crisis of identity, like of just what I wanted to do with my life. Do I even like playing music? It was, dude, that was hard.
all these real inner questions you ask yourself, isn't it? Because like alcohol's its own crutch, isn't it? Like, and when you remove that, it's not just giving up the drinking, it's what it leaves behind. So for me, it was a lifetime of questions that I've been avoiding came slapping me straight in the face.
Yeah.
Plus the cravings and what my mates were saying to me and what I was being called because I wasn't drinking. And as you say, the identity, who am I without this? My name was Glugs, right? And that's the cloak I wore. Every time I went out, it's like Glugs is here, get the beers. And so when I removed that cloak, I was naked standing there. I didn't even know who I was myself,
Mate, I didn't even know if, like, I'd find myself laughing at a joke and I'm like, do I even find that funny? Or am I still pretending, am I still playing the character?
Yeah.
Like, it was so horrible just having to face yourself, which has both benefits but you initially can only see the negative. When you have to look at yourself completely clearly in the mirror, you now have to face all your regrets. You have to look at all the mistakes you made. You like all your cringe moments start flooding in, like things you thought you forgot, but they're like, hello, I'm actually here. And just like you're just crunched over in a corner, like crying, just remembering the wake of horrible things that you've done. But then also one thing I found in that eventually, with a lot of help and just guidance, but just also trying to be objective, is that if you're objective about it, you also have to see the good things in yourself as well. Like you have to objectively look at the terrible things you've done, obviously, because seek forgiveness where you can and try and repair things that you can repair. But also it's like, oh right, actually, how did I manage to still play well? I must be actually good at my job. oh, actually, I've still got my family around me and my close friends. I'm not completely a piece of shit. Like you have to, because you can really let it just become like depression is so self-indulgent, and you can really let yourself go down this spiral. It's like, oh well, I'm terrible, oh well, I'm just like a waste of space, and then that just is a really good excuse to relapse and just to get bang on it again. So you have to, I think, you have to find the good things even in those horrible times to try and claw yourself back.
Yeah, it's the victim mentality, isn't it? And it's when you're feeling when you've removed alcohol, you're vulnerable, aren't you?
Mm.
And it's easy sometimes to go to the victim mentality. So why am I like that? Why can't I drink normally? Who am I without a drink and whatever? But look, even that last question I said, who am I without a drink?
Yeah,
Is who am I without a drink?
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's
And when you look inside yourself and you look at the benefits of it, and I quite often say to people with my coaching, it's like always take the positive out of the situation because it's so easy to look at the negative, but it's what you do with it as well. And we're here in the present right
mhm,
now. So if you've got regrets, you have to kind of deal with them and think, right, what's the best thing I can do with that now? The best thing I can do is learn from those regrets, make amends if you can.
mhm.
If you can't, you've got to live with that. But it's what you can do from here forward that,
I found that one hard actually. The things that I can't, like, there's some people I've hurt badly that is like seemingly irreparable, and I've sort of
yeah,
had to leave alone, and that still hurts. And I think that's probably the hardest one, where it's like actually, no matter what how good your intentions are now, you have to leave some people alone, because actually if you start breaking down their door down, being like, I'm sorry, it's actually not for you, it's not for them, it's for you, and actually
yeah,
that can become hurtful in itself. But like you're saying, it's about finding the good. It's like what I found is that, and something that I say, I'm not sure if I got it from somewhere, but the idea in my head is that like the blast radius of your bad decisions is obviously quite wide. Like you hurt people, it affects lots of people that you don't even know that you're hurting. But what I found just since, say, getting sober, getting clean, chatting about it, but even not necessarily chatting about it, just the mood around the people around me who love me and can see the difference. Like I found that the blast radius of your good decisions is way further reaching. Like I'm helped, like just me chatting about getting sober, as I get so many messages every day from people, from fans across the world who just like, oh, thank you for sharing this, or like I didn't know you could, this is kind of cringy, but it's like saying stuff like, I didn't know that you could be sober and still cool. Like still do what I do, and they're like, oh my god, I can't believe that you're sober and I still, I'm still into your vibe. I thought that, because like sometimes playing on stage you kind of need a bit of a dangerous attitude, and you think that drinking or doing coke or doing whatever is part of that, but it's like that's in you. Like you, that sort of kind of punk attitude and that sort of that controlled kind of danger, chaos, whatever you want to call it, creativity actually. Thankfully, it's still in there. And I say to anybody who is a musician or any form of creative who thinks that it's all going to go away when you sober up, it's like no. It actually weaponizes you when you have clarity, because it's like
yeah,
not only do you have clarity, access to all your faculties, but you have time. Like you
yeah,
just gain so much time to actually do your projects. Like at the minute, obviously I play with Gorillaz, and we're about to kick off a tour, so that's taking up a lot of my time. But I also have a radio show on Boogaloo Radio every Saturday that I can do. I work out, I now go to the gym, etc. I have time to cook every day and try new recipes, all sorts of different things that. And I've just scored a short film with Harley Davidson with my friend Charlie Morton. Juggling all of these things, I would not have been able to do that at all, because like I just used to have maybe 2 or 3 workable hours in a day,
yeah,
like because the rest was either I was out of it or just recovering.
yeah,
But like I could maybe pop out for something, so yeah, you gain so much time and just headspace.
Yeah, it's not the actual practicalities of your day, it's the headspace. Because
Mm,
when you're drinking, um, the next day you're thinking about the regret from the last day, how you're
yeah,
gonna manifest the next drink. It's a constant circle of doom when you're
yeah,
drinking. And
yeah,
when you stop, it frees up all this time, as you say, which in your industry can allows you to be more creative. But isn't it funny what you said earlier, that people expect you to be
yeah,
drinking on drugs, are hard.
yeah. It's like you. I used to think this. I think I can't remember if you're chatting about sober shaming
Yeah, I
with
did, yeah.
someone. Yeah, like I used to be one of those guys who's just like, I used to say I don't want to work with anybody I can't have a pint with,
Yeah.
and like all of that stuff. And I used to look down on some people who were, say, sober or whatever, because I was like, you're not really rock and roll, you're not really one of
Yeah.
us. But it's like that's terrible. Like, what a actual horrible thing to.
We're all guilty of it. I've said some terrible things, like
Mm,
I really have. And I suppose, in a way, I empathise with people that are like that now, because it's lack of education, in a way that I was ill-educated. But now I see the other side. You know, I was on a boat party the other day, and there were 200 people on there, all sober, and it was
raw.
just, the atmosphere was incredible.
Wow, that's cool.
Absolutely incredible. It's almost like a rebirth in people, where they found a new path in their life with clarity, they're authentic, and all the decisions and choices are made with a clear mind, rather than, in the morning you're hungover and you're thinking, God, what did I say last night? Did I promise them this? And uh,
Yeah,
did I really send that? How am I going to, it's just so cloudy. But
yeah.
how, how bad did your drinking get before you realised that you had to do something about it?
Well, so my drinking was always, it was initially just drinking, but then it eventually became coupled hand in hand with cocaine. Um, so it got, I think right at the end, it was sort of three months just in my room, like literally with up to the level of the bed height of bottles, rubbish, old food, could not see the floor. I had to jump over it to get to my bed, and like I would not answer the door. Um, like everything, like my phone was shut off, my internet was shut off. I didn't have any like anything. I was going to the, whenever I could scrape or lie into getting some money from someone, go to the offie, and it was just like that bottom shelf wine, like 3 bottles of barefoot or whatever. Any acid I could get, stealing fags off the floor, because I was also gave up cigarettes as well, which still sometimes is like, just catches you off guard. You sometimes smell a cigarette, it's like, oh, that smells delicious. That one's hard. But it was sort of cutting myself and being completely isolated, like crying, like just constantly crying, remembering some traumatic things that happened to me when I was younger as well. Which that was one of the things that was surprising. It's within the fog of this horrendous moment in my life, I actually got some old memories came back of some abuse that I had when I was a kid. So it's horrendous, but that also is one thing that actually was a bit of a, call it God, call it the universe, call it whatever. But it was just a bit like, there could be a reason beyond you just being a waste of space,
Yeah.
that these things, that your life has led to these sorts of things. Because I grew up in a Christian family, there was no booze in the house ever. Mum and dad do not drink, do not smoke, do not party, do not do any of that stuff. It's, my brothers and sisters, drink, but it's like not.
Like yours.
I never saw anybody stumbling about like pissed in the gaff.
Yeah.
All the things I used to do, like getting up to drinking in parks and going to parties and stuff, was all like under the table. It was all sneaking out, and so it was none of that stuff stemmed from home. So it's just like that's also another part of this where you're sort of trying to find blaming yourself. It's just like, well, why can't I be good like, my mum and dad? And I was never taught this, so what's this come from? But you find that with, say, being raised in sort of relatively strict upbringings, you tend to rebel.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, it happens a lot, and it's happened a lot with a lot of my friends. And that's not to say that I grew up a believer, but I wouldn't say I am anymore. And I've got no beef with that. I love my parents absolutely dearly. In fact, my relationship with them is the best now than it's ever been post. Again, you talk about being authentic. It's like I was expecting them to freak out when they really learned the extent of my use and all that stuff, but their response was just like, "How can we help? I'm going to look for rehabs." Like, they didn't give me a lecture, which is what I expected. Like, they didn't chuck the Bible at me, which is what I expected. It was just love. Same with my brothers and sisters, and my partner, who's just been the best. She's been with me through it all, and it's been a team sport getting me back on my feet. And I just received nothing but love. But I couldn't really put my finger on why, like, I got it, because I didn't get it from my parents or anything like that. But there's lots of little things that have sort of led me down this path, and it sort of gradually just crept up.
So did you use it, do you think, quite early as an escape mechanism? Because I did. I was 14 years old, and I realised that it fixed my problem.
Well, I liked it because it was not allowed. That was kind of
the rebelling in you.
Exactly. My friends were doing it. I thought it was cool. Again, like rock and roll. I was playing this like skate punk music. My idols were sort of doing stuff like that. But I just wanted to be involved. I always wanted to fit in, which is one of the products of moving around a lot, is that you're kind of always the odd one out. Like I said, I lived in Holland, and in Holland, the early 90s, it was, we stuck out like a sore thumb. It's quite a racist country at the time, but I realized a little bit later in life that I just remembered how horrible some people were to me at school, being a black kid. So you stuck out there. Then we moved back to Nigeria, but I moved back to Nigeria from Europe. So all my mates in Nigeria were like, "Why are you putting on a weird accent?" So I stuck out because I wasn't super Nigerian, you know. And then so you try your best to fit in. You sort of pick up accents, and then I moved to England, and it's like I've come straight from Lagos, and again, like I'm suddenly another with a name like Cher. People are like, "Oh, you sound like Cher the singer," and it becomes a little like joke. So I'm immediately trying to fit in there. So again, it's constantly trying to like have no attention drawn to yourself. Which at the same time attracting lots of attention. Like I always felt that. So when my mates, like, as you do, and not to say that there's a healthy kind of drinking when you're 14, but some people, it's what a lot of people do, and lots of people grow out of it, and it doesn't necessarily become a heavy problem, but again, it creeps up. You start doing it a little bit at house parties on the weekend, with your friends, and then eventually you start sort of finding bottles of stuff and just like being like, "Oh, what's this?" Like when everyone's at the party, you go through the cabinets and have a swig of whatever.
I'll call it
beer burgling.
I used to do it in clubs. I mean, how grim is that? I used to. So when everyone went on the dance floor, I'd go around nicking people's pints and glugging them down, And I mean,
so hectic.
That's mad, isn't it? But so when you were booked into the rehab, was that when you sorted it all out?
So yeah, it was kind of because it was a really drastic change, and actually it was quite shocking to Kaz, my missus, because I'd never tried to get sober or clean or anything before this. I'd never tried to quit drinking. I loved it, like until I hated it, like, and even when I hated it, I still wanted to do it. I'd never tried giving up anything. So I think I was like, Kaz was like a bit like, aren't you going to try something, maybe like a little program or something that doesn't have to take you in? But programs are expensive, and my folks managed to find this program called Teen Challenge, and it's free. Like you go on benefits to sort of go on it. It's a Christian rehab, which turns a lot of people off actually, but it turns out it was a great program. I walked into the doors at the Willoughby House Centre. So there's a few different centres across the country. It's like in Wales, in London, sort of near Leicestershire, Glasgow, I think up in Scotland as well. And I just felt love in that place. And like April 1st to 2019, I walked in those doors, and I stopped everything on that day. And it's a really hard program because it is 10 months at this centre, which is like in the middle of a motorway, so it's nowhere near like anywhere really. It's no phones, no TV, no internet.
No
The only
guitar.
no guitar. But there were guitars there because it's a Christian program, so you have chapel like every day, and you have you go to church on the weekends, and like there was music. That was the hard thing. It's like I wanted to play in the church band, which I grew up doing, even though I was doing all my whatever I was doing on the Saturday night, on the Friday night, on the Thursday night, whatever. I would always be playing in the church band because I fit in. I knew how to do it. I knew all the right things to say, etc. But not only is it hard because it's 10 months in that place, but it's a really demanding program. So like, shall I run you through like a typical day
Yeah.
at Teen Challenge? So you're up at and this is coming from someone who has no structure. I've been a touring musician,
Yeah.
self-employed,
Lived in loads of places.
lived in loads of places. I've never had like a daily routine.
Yeah.
So this was, and I can't remember, these timings aren't exactly, but this was a typical day. So you're up at 7:15, and immediately you hoover and tidy your room. Like you have a roommate. It's all lads as well. This centre, they split them into men's and women's sort of centres. All men. It's called Teen Challenge. There were no teenagers there. I was actually one of the youngest, and I went in there. I was like 29 or something. And you immediately have to clean because your room gets inspected every day, every morning. So like you make your bed, you have to make it really nice. You have to clean your bathroom. You have to hoover up the room. This is all first thing as soon as you get up. And then that's 7:15, 7:45, you go down to the main living room. And again, if you're late, you get like a tick against your name and you have to do like an extra washing up, or you lose some sort of privilege. And that's for 15 minutes of quiet time, which that was probably my favourite time of the day. Between 7:45 and 8 in the morning, you could read a Bible, you could read whatever book you're reading, or just sit there in silence, meditate, look out the window, whatever. But it was just everybody started the day with just a moment of calm, which was great. Sort of really centered you. Then you have breakfast at 8. And with every meal, you could be working in the kitchen, helping bring out the food or helping prepare the food. That was actually one of my favourite parts of the programme. I ended up in the kitchen a fair amount. That's 8 till half 8. Half 8, you start to clean everybody has jobs to clean the building because it used to be like a Best Western Hotels. It's quite a big place, so you get allotted some jobs. It changes every week. You could be cleaning in the foyer, you could be doing the men's toilets, you could be doing all sorts of different things. Then you have chapel at 9 till about 9:45, and then at 10 you have like your first module of the day. So there were 13 courses you had to take before you could pass the program, and they range of different things. There's Christian based ones, but then there's also things just like loving and accepting myself, anger and personal rights, like all these things that you sort of are dealing with that actually for a lot of men you do not ever sit and think about, oh, how do I actually approach my anger, or loving accepting myself, like through failure and all the horrible things you've done. How do I look at myself objectively and love it? Which I found that was a really powerful one. The anger and personal rights program, you had to be in really small groups because it could get pretty leery.
Yeah.
It's like guys, floods of tears, shouting, etc. Like it was because mate, like I just saw some broken lives, man. It was not that many people finished the program because it's voluntary, but I must have seen about 100 people come and go in 10 months who just couldn't finish it because it's just a lot. But you do that to like 10:45, then you have a cup of tea. You can only get cups of tea at certain periods of time in the day, so you can't just be in the kitchen all the time. And then you carry that on, that whatever module that was, till I think about 11:45 or something. Got a little bit of free time, then you have lunch. And the food was really good actually. That was another reason why people kept on leaving, because say you're going in there. I got in there, I was like 9.5 stone and I'm 6'2". So I was an absolute rake when I went in there. But a month of just eating good food, like you put it on a stone, you look at yourself in the mirror, and you think, oh man, I'm doing all right actually. Like I'm clean, like I'm looking all right. So people get out the door, especially like heroin addicts. Actually, they would be out the door quick because they said, oh, actually, I'm all right. I don't need this.
Yeah.
And then literally within a week, they'll be calling up, trying to get back in, but their bed's been taken. That was really important actually. The food was really, really good. And then you did you'd have lunch, have a little break, and then it was like your work duties for the day. So between like 1 and 4 p.m, like I said, there were big grounds, so like you could be doing the gardening, like mowing the lawns and stuff. You could be working on like painting something, doing electric work. You could be there was also like a woodwork shop like down the road where lads made things, and it was actually sold in the charity shop, some of them. There was also sometimes like IT courses. There was a kitchen safety, getting like a qualification to I can't remember what it's called, but there was stuff like that. But that was a hard part of the day because I was like a few hours again working in the kitchen. That was quite hard because you were feeding like 40-50 people every day for every meal. And then it'll come to 4, you have a bit of a break, and then you have dinner at 5:30, till about and then a bit of time off till about 6:30, 7, where you have your evening session, which is called personal studies, which is in silence, which was again hard for like 30 men, like who are adults used to doing all kinds of madness, to sit in silence, to either work on your workbook from whatever module you did in the morning, or again do reading, whatever. But you couldn't sleep, and you couldn't write personal letters. I think in that time you had to do some sort of study. That was till like 7:45. Then you had another cup of tea, or sometimes we'd watch like a preaching video or something like that. But that would take you through till about 8:30, 8:45. You had chapel at 9 till 9:30 or 9:45, something like that. You had to be upstairs at 10. So all the lads we were upstairs and on one hallway. So everybody upstairs, you couldn't go back down for a cuppa or anything like that. 10, you had to be in your rooms, 10:30, lights out, 10:45, repeat.
Well, it sounds like prison.
Yeah, I mean, so there were lads who said prison was easier.
Yeah.
There were lots of people who actually had been to prison, because you could still, in prison, obviously you can still get whatever you want. You can still get drugs, you can still drink, you can still find ways of getting around. But this was like a zero, complete abstinence program.
Yeah.
So like mentally, it's extremely challenging, especially when you're coming from a life of no structure, as a lot of addicts are.
And at that age as well, where so when you came out after 10 months, how did you then, you were 10 months clean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was there any education in there to help you with your drug and alcohol addiction?
So yeah, we did a little bit, but actually it was more on like a spiritual side of things. And a lot of people who came out of the program, they were, thankfully I've come from a family that was able to support me. So I actually went from Willoughby House. I went to my mum and dad's in Lancashire, up in Chorley. So I stayed with them. A lot of people go on to like a halfway house or some sort of other program to because you still have 6 months on the program where you have to check in every week with your advisor slash counselor from the centre, etc. But I wouldn't say I came out with much formal, like I didn't learn about brain chemistry and things like that. It was more like on the sort of spiritual mental side of things, of how to deal with addiction and what is done. But no, actually thinking about it now, I actually am quite ill-educated in the physiological side of addiction. It's only through sort of really listening to people like yourself and other great sort of podcasters and reading up on things and chatting to like my therapist have I really sort of started to break down that side of things. But what Teen Challenge did was not just get me clean, etc., but sort of help start the process of sorting out my head and my heart. Really,
I can see it, and to be honest, mate, it really doesn't matter how you do it. It's if it works,
Exactly.
And, like AA didn't work for me, but since then I've been more open-minded because I've kind of thought I was in the wrong meeting and maybe I should have gone to 2 or 3 others.
Right.
Because the people might not have suited me, or and really, because I was right at the beginning, I was, well, this isn't working for me, so what else will? Looking for solutions. Well, the solution was in myself,
Yeah.
and it took me some time to realise that, and with the support of the sober community,
Which is amazing, isn't it?
it's
Like,
unbelievable.
I can believe it. Like, that's one thing. Also, starting to talk about my sobriety in the music industry, I was really taken aback by the amount of people who messaged me, who I've known for years or I hadn't seen because I was away for a couple of years, were like, dude, I'm sober now. Or people that I had known from before that I didn't realise were sober. And not just in terms of playing, but you think about people in record labels, like, especially if they've been in the industry from like the 80s and 90s when it was like proper, like just cash everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I know a few sort of publishers who are like, on the sober journey now, and it's like it's really opened up actually a new side of things that was really encouraging, because again, you don't really see that, but you're probably surrounded by sober people all the time.
Yeah, but also these conversations that you have as as a role model, like you are to so many different age groups as well, it creates that spark of conversation in their own mind, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to judge you and go, what's wrong with you? You're sober now, because there's such a movement growing. People that go, God, there's another one and he's amazing, and his music
Yeah.
and the band, and God, that makes me feel like, should I sort my drinking out? All these conversations that we have, little nuggets, little one-liners that we say. A good friend of mine, she's given up drinking because she heard me say moderation is like dumping your ex and sleeping with them at the weekend.
I remember that. That was
Yeah.
pretty deep.
Do you know what I mean, though?
I do.
And people relate to that, and that stuck in her mind. And she's now 100 and something days sober, and it was
Big up.
because of that one line. And it's things like you might put out there, or the conversations that can have a ripple effect that can
It's like I
change
was
your
saying.
life.
It's exactly what I was saying about how the blast radius of your good decisions goes way further than you could ever know. Like, there's people that have never said anything to you. I'm talking about you specifically because what you do is so amazing. But it's probably someone at like your local Tesco's or something who might have known you back in the madness, who has just been looking at you from afar, being like, I cannot believe that's the same person.
Yeah.
Like, I've been truly astounded at, like, and I don't like preaching at people about, I work with people who drink, etc. Whatever. Thankfully, I must say this: I'm super well supported. I'm actually really lucky to be playing with the people that I play with because, again, they've seen it all. They're not scared by anything. They're like, look, if you need us, we're going to give you every help. I've got all the help I need. I was asked if I wanted to come back. They didn't expect me to come back because they knew what it is, and thankfully, with the pandemic, it's sort of slowed my return to doing what we do, which was actually really helpful because I've had to do a lot of work. Obviously, I'm only 3 years into this journey. You got it was 4 years recently, right?
No, no, no. I'm the same as you.
Right.
I'm three. You said April, right?
Yeah.
2019. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was January. So
Man.
yeah, I think you saw one of my posts where it says 4 years ago. I
Right.
had that really, really big rock bottom that
That's
started the
it.
process for me, and it's important to say you don't actually always need a rock bottom to do that. But for me, it was
No.
like, God, you know what? I escaped death
Yeah. Yeah.
then, and it made me look at it differently. It was a real slap in the face.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say you shouldn't. Don't wait for rock bottom because number one, you may not come back.
Yeah,
100%. But also, rock bottom may not be enough because the amount of rock bottoms you probably went through before hitting that one.
yeah,
Like there were so many times when you woke up in places that you shouldn't have been, or like end up in hospital, or were throwing up for 2 days straight. It's like you should have stopped then, but the problem with addicts is like you keep pushing through rock bottoms.
yeah,
Like like you somehow manage to just tunnel quite easily through stuff. I mean, how many times do you say to yourself, "I'm never going to do this again"?
yeah.
Like, I don't want to do this, and you just find a way. I would, for those people listening who are like, don't let it get to where you have to do it. It's like things happen so much better when you walk into it as opposed to a crash and like fall in.
I honestly caveat that with the fact that I find, uh, and this is not generalizing to the extreme, but most men wait for the rock bottom, where
True.
they can't, like what you were saying in your place, your rehab place, is that you get 30 men there trying to deal with their emotions and that, and it sometimes goes against the grain.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, I talk to a lot of men. Oh, my followers are 85% women, but
Right.
the men that are the curtain twitchers that might send me a DM and they go, mate, I'm really worried about my drinking. What can I do? Um, so they think, do you know what? It's that old thing. It's just a few beers with a football. What are you talking about? I ain't got a problem. But deep down, they know they have got a real problem, but they can't even start to begin how to
Yeah.
address that. So they hit the rock bottoms. But that's what I'm trying to do, is to open the conversation that it's okay for men to cry. It's okay for
Yeah.
men to reach out and show their vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
and to accept help as well.
Accepting help is probably because again, I think actually even acknowledging the problem, a lot of men can do, but it's then because you have to not just know it, you have to do something about it, and to
Yeah.
do something about it, you need to talk to someone. You need to at least raise it with your mates. Like that's really really hard. Like it was again, it was overwhelming how supportive people were. I thought, you say you're going to rehab, it's like, okay, you're a failure, you're useless, like you've clearly, really, really messed up, etc. But it's like, actually, what it actually is you're trying to sort yourself out, and the real ones around you are going to be supportive of that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like you'd be surprised at how many people are fighting your corner, like would or will be once you start actually doing something about it. Because you've said sorry a million times, you haven't paid the money back, you've lied, cheated, steal, da da da. Da. It's like no one cares about you apologizing. Like what's it called? There's one phrase that I think I heard we were saying in rehabs. It's like your behavior doesn't lie. And it's like until you start doing something, you can tell someone you love them all the time, but until you actually show them that you love them in some actual way by doing something, it doesn't matter. Until you actually make a physical step in this actual physical universe to do something, you can say you're sorry all you like, or you can think you need help all you like, but actually, unfortunately, means you actually stepping out and doing something.
Yeah. And you also find out who the people are around you. So you said before it'd have been quite easy for your family to have judged you on it and looked at what you'd done wrong, but instead they said, "Okay, we're here to support you," and you find that with your real true friends, because
Yeah.
the beer mates, your drinking buddies down the pub, all they're thinking about is how it's going to affect their drinking if you stop drinking. you
Yeah,
know.
it's true.
So they're not your true friends, but the people that stick with you, love you for you, the essence of you,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's what's
that's
important.
that really is. And actually, speaking of Paloma, like she's she's a real one. Like, okay, we don't professionally work together anymore, but like, because I went off the radar, I didn't tell that many people that I was going in, but I sort of just disappeared for a bit, and it came up. It was coming up to like the 10-year anniversary of her first album or something, and she was like, "Oh, I need to chat to Cher. Where is he?" And she saw that I was sort of a bit AWOL, and like was calling up my mates, like my girl Lex, and she was like, "Oh, this still Cher's number? Like, what is he like?" She found my number, and she found out what was going on, and then she called up the rehab, and like the receptionist was like, "Cher, I think Paloma Faith is on the phone
Uh,
for you," and couldn't believe it. So she tracked me down, and like we had a couple nice phone calls. Like she's a real one. Like she was like, "Oh, he sounds like he's in trouble," and she's been a wonderful, beautiful, beautiful support. As have like again my all my closest friends from I'm from Bromley, and all my sort of bezies have been, not that they've condoned everything. No, they haven't just been like, "Hey, like I learned a lot of home truths." That was the hard thing as well. Like hearing my family was supportive, but I got some letters in there of my family telling me how hard it had been, and just like breaking down how hurt they were for certain things, which was ultimately healthy. But also with some of my friends, like it wasn't hasn't just been a completely easy route back. But what has helped has been my consistency in changing the way that I live. That's been the best apology that I could ever do
yeah,
to anybody.
yeah,
It's like, well, I'm actually now actively, clearly a different person and doing
yeah.
way, way better. And that's really helped to mend relationships.
That's what I said earlier about being in the present, right? Because some of the things I did, I was under the influence of a highly addictive, toxic drug that is accepted all over the world, right? And I bought into it straight away. I was like this Bitcoin maniac that has gone, yeah, this is it from the age of 14, right? And I was
Yeah,
hook, line, and sinker. And a lot of things I did,
yeah,
I didn't even know I did. So I kind of excuse it in a way that, look, I really wasn't myself back then, but I'm my true authentic self now, trying to live my best life, trying to be the kindest, most honest, giving person I can be for myself and others. And that's how I try and make up for it now, because
yeah.
giving back is a huge thing in this community.
It, yeah, it really is. And that's not to say that once you are sober, everything's all right. And that's not to say that you become a perfect person. It's
No,
like, yeah, not at all. But it's still like it is a process, and you're still working on stuff. Like it's not an immediate switch or anything like that. You still make mistakes. Like
yeah,
you make mistakes when you're pissed. You still make mistakes when you're
yeah.
sober. Like it's not. It doesn't
And
just
it never
change things.
will
But
be. There's
at,
there's no finish line
yeah,
to sobriety. You have to
exactly.
work at it for the rest of your life, but you're giving yourself the best chance you can. And that includes even food choices, health. You say you go
Yeah,
to the gym,
yeah.
conversations with people that you remember. There's a million things on the list you can add to sobriety that, creativity. What's your you're 34 this year. What is your music abilities going to be like in 10 years time through having a clear
Yeah.
mind? Whatever it
I
is,
mean, I'm
bloody invite
already.
me, mate, because
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we got some shows coming up, mate. Give me a shout. No, like I already feel it. I know I'm better now than I was, 3-4 years ago. Like I've never felt so confident and so competent. Like before, I like it was so horrible. Like I'd be on stage in front of say 50,000 people. All I wanted to do was get off stage and have my line and have a drink. Like by
Yeah.
the end of it, it was just like playing shows was getting in the way.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I was the whole time not confident. Like I looked, I was like having it on stage, but in my head I was thinking, "Oh mate, that was shit. Oh, that was shit. Oh mate, am I in time? Oh god, like people look at me, I'm terrible." Da, da, da. Like it was such a, I felt terrible like a lot of the time, which sounds horrible to say and mad to think that I'm doing this amazing job and playing these great shows, but in my head I was like, this is crazy, and I felt really insecure. But now that I'm sober, I'm still a little bit like, because there's insecurity there, but I know that I'm good at what I do. Like it's not clouded in
Mm.
any rubbish anymore. It's like
Mm.
I feel good because I've worked hard, and like these, we just did 10 straight days rehearsals for this new Gorillaz tour, which were really hard, but they were the most productive rehearsals we've ever had. I think everyone was just like, we've had a few years off, we're ready to rock and roll. Everyone's like a bit clearer. There's other people sort of in, some people like in a recovery journey, some people like, there's just a beautiful atmosphere and everybody wanting the best for everyone else. And which has always been the case, but it's just like there just feels like it feels like a new breath of fresh air. I don't know, and we're just so on fire because
Mm.
we're just a bit, there's just a bit more clarity there, and
Mm.
I've actually never felt better, and I feel like I'm
Have they
definitely just
seen
getting
a big
started.
difference in you? Have they mentioned it?
Yeah, 100%. Like in fact, one of the things, yeah, it's been really lovely actually hearing that feedback. And in one respect, it's been great to people say like, "Oh, you look great." Like I've put on some timber, um, all of that. But people have been commenting about the things that I care about. It's like not just that I look good, but it's like, "Oh, I'm playing well," and "Oh, you look so bright," and you can really tell that you're
The
feeling good
energy,
about
your
yourself.
energy.
Like yeah, it translates. Like you don't realize how far that can get. Like you project when you're feeling good about yourself, you project it. One of the saddest things that from when I was still using, I heard, like I remember being at Victoria Station, going through the barriers about to get on a train, and getting tapped on the shoulder, and it was my friend Hannah. I hope she doesn't mind me saying this. It's my friend Hannah and her mum and her sister. And when I was in such a darkness at that time, like really, really sad, really down. And I was like, "Oh, hey guys, I can't really talk." Because I didn't want to see anybody, I didn't want to speak to anybody. Just wanted to sit on the train. I was like, "Hey, bye." But I heard uh, years later that the way I looked, just even from behind, you could tell how dark I felt. Because I think Hannah said something like they thought I was someone. They looked at me and just like, "Oh, that person looks so sad." Like, "Oh shit, I think
Mm.
we should get that person some food or something." Because from behind, I looked. You could tell that I was just super super low. Sorry, Hannah, if I didn't recount that story well. But the what I'm trying to say is the darkness was palpable. It was clear even without looking at my face, my body language, the
Mm.
way my clothes were hanging off my body because I was so thin. It
Yeah.
was like, oh man. And then they realized, oh shit, that's Cher, and just like then said hello. But it's like, fuck, like I didn't know that. I thought I was still relatively slick, but I was projecting all this funk because I was just bringing this darkness with me because I hated being out. Like I hated leaving my flat for whatever reason, like because I just didn't want to bump into anybody. I got super agoraphobic by the end of it. Like I just get like anxiety about leaving the flat, about having to face anyone and face anything. Full stop. Like when my phone would ring, I had to change my phone ringtone because it was so. It's still to this day I hear it like this Samsung ringtone, and it's so triggering to me because it's the sound I avoided like the plague
Yeah,
because I just
I
didn't.
really relate to that.
Yeah.
Because I lived on my own for 10 years, and in the end, even my neighbours, I lived in a row of six cottages, right?
Mm.
So everyone kind of, it's like a little commune.
Right.
But when I started drinking, my isolated drinking kicked in. They say, "Oh, we're having a party Saturday night. Come and join us." I used to sit in the dark behind the sofa with a liter of vodka and some tonic because I didn't want to go next door, because I didn't want to socialize. I didn't want to have my drinking controlled either, because I thought I've got to talk to people. I can't get too
Yeah.
drunk. I look like shit.
Yeah.
So I sat, it was the weirdest thing.
Ugh, it's
And
not
then
the
I
one
would
like
crawl up on my hands and knees to bed and fall into bed, and I could hear it all going off in the garden, laughing. And I was
fun,
almost like, F off, like
angry.
enjoy
Yeah.
myself, you know?
I had that the Christmas before I went in. Like, I think I told people that like I was on my own at for that Christmas. Um, I've been invited to different things for that Christmas, but I was just like, I turned people down. I ended up just Christmas was like a few bottles of wine and an 8 ball alone, like you say, in the dark, just in my flat, being sad, but also being angry that no one was breaking my door down, dragging me out to their Christmas thing. I was like, oh, doesn't anybody care? But I was like, well, I said no to everyone. Like I told
Yeah,
people that I was fine, or I lied saying, oh, I might be spending it here or something. Like that isolation, which is uh, it feeds the worst thing you could possibly do is like
yeah,
keeping secrets and isolating. Like that's one of my sort of red flags that when I know that I'm probably on the road to sort of relapse, which happens way before you actually take anything. But it's like when I start hiding where I'm going, or if I start lying about little things like that, just saying I'm like, oh, I'm too busy to do something, and just like there's just shady stuff like that, which is just telltale signs that you're probably headed back
yeah.
um,
Red
in
flags.
that direction.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you've got to be wary of those things. Like I mean, I've had it with sugar, obviously since being sober, which has been a
yeah,
big one. I had
yeah,
it with alcohol-free beers. Like I found which I do like every now and then, but it's like but at one point I was just like, mate, I was having them every night. I was just like, what am I doing? Like,
yeah.
what is the point? It's not one to one, obviously, because I used to get absolutely fucking smashed. But stuff like that is like, okay, I need to not do that for a while, or
Yeah.
for who knows. I moved on to the kombucha now.
Oh, I love a bit of that.
But it's yeah, I know. I live next to a Waitrose, man. It's got to be done. Yeah, bougie. And I've got
Kombucha is
money for
good for you as
kombucha now
well.
because I'm not. Yeah, good for your gut. Um, that's another thing, man. You got so much more money, which you can still make mistakes with and can still waste and squander. But at least I'd be squandering my money on my sort of terms, and not on like
Yeah,
some illegal stuff, or
yeah,
like because I would just have no cash, like finishing tours, like world tours, and having no money to
yeah.
show for
It's
it. It's like
madness, isn't it?
ridiculous.
Just chucking it
Oh
away.
God,
But
terrible.
look, I'm aware of the time because my podcast is, one for the road. I like to keep it within an hour, and I can honestly say that I could talk to you for absolute hours. You've got a
Mate, me
lovely,
too.
lovely
I love it.
energy about you, mate. Honestly, you're just the loveliest guy.
Thank you.
And I
Appreciate it.
appreciate you coming on. Before we go, what have you got coming up so the listeners can look forward to coming to see you, maybe?
So, yeah, like I said, Gorillaz were on the road for the first time in a long time. So we're about to kick off a tour. Like, I leave a week today actually to head to Uruguay. Um, so we're going to be in South America for a month, but then we come to Europe and do like 2 months of festivals and some of our own shows. So we're doing in England though. We're playing All Points East Festival. It's the end of August, I think. And there's loads of stuff on the continent that would be really fun to come to. And at the minute, that's all I think we've announced. Hopefully, there's going to be some more shows. Again, it's still kind of mad doing shows because you don't know if COVID or like we had to cancel 2 shows, obviously, because we were going to play Moscow, then Kiev. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's not happening.
Oh,
You just don't know what's around the corner. So hopefully there'll be some more shows. We'll see. But at the minute, All Points East is our only London show. hopefully there might be a Dublin show as well. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, head to like the Gorillaz website, and it might be worth coming to like Primavera, or if you're looking for a good summer fezzy on the continent, we're doing lots. So come check us out.
Fantastic, mate. And you're a real inspiration. You really are. And I feel so grateful that you've agreed to do this. And I'm sure people are comment after, and I know they'll be saying, what an absolutely lovely guy.
Oh
So,
man, I hope so.
no, they will. Trust me, they will. I know my listeners, and you
Yeah,
are
yeah,
anyway, whether they do or not. So I'm telling you.
yeah. Like me, please. The bloody addict in me, just like wanting it.
I
But
know.
no, mate. I only recently got into listening to your podcast, but I've literally, like I'm saying, we're just doing those rehearsals for 10 straight days. On the way to rehearsals every day, I was popping it on, and I found your story and just the guests you've had on just so inspiring. And again, the sober community, which I've discovered through social media, has been so cool, and it's opened so many doors, and it's challenged me a lot in a lot of ways. Like, so again, I didn't do a 12-step program, but
Yeah.
looking into, say, things from that I think would be useful, and like checking out someone else's kind of style of recovery or whatever. I know some people who aren't completely abstinent. I know some people still smoke. It's like, oh, there's all this like conversation, like you say, like you're a grey area, right?
Yeah.
Sort of looking at not just being on a side, like I'm a 12-step side, I'm a complete,
Yeah.
like, it's like, how can we all make each other better? And
Yeah.
I always say that this is a team sport. You
Yeah. I love that.
cannot do it alone.
Oh,
There's
I love that.
no way you can do it alone. And
Yeah.
everybody needs help, no matter who you are.
Yeah. And where you say I'm a grey area drinking coach, but I was never that because I was right down the other end of the scale.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I feel that's more specialist. So I help people that have got other things going on. And also, I you know, if you can listen to someone without judgment, that alone is really giving more support to someone than that you realise. You know,
Yeah.
without saying, well, try and do this, can't you do that? And like just
Yeah.
listening for people to
Yeah.
unload that is such powerful work.
Because there is nothing worse than someone telling you how to sort your life out. It's just like, you don't
Especially
know
if you don't
me.
like being told what to do, like me.
Exactly. Like a lot of people. And actually, what's even worse, what could be more damaging, is if you're a super subservient person who, say, because of trauma or whatever, it's like you just agree with people. Like, I'm a people pleaser, so which is an issue to the extent that it can be. But it's like, you could suggest something to someone that may actually harm them, but they'll do it because, say, someone who's prominent has
Yeah.
suggested it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be really sensitive, and like you say, the first and easiest thing you can do to help someone is just let them talk to you.
Yeah.
And that is actually one of the best things you could possibly do, especially if you're starting on a sobriety journey. Don't think about a program. Don't think about buying anything. Don't think about spending a single cent. Find someone just to talk to.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna
a
help you.
close friend, you know,
Yeah.
someone you trust, just to get the process going. Even if you're not ready to give up drinking, if you can make
Over a pint,
yeah.
if need be.
Well, but that's true though, mate.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like you could have a pint and say, I'm really beginning to feel quite anxious about how much I'm drinking.
Yeah.
And that starts the ball rolling. And, you know, as soon as you open the door, it can start that process, you know. And that's what happened with me in that April 4 years ago when I just thought the party's got to end here because otherwise I'm going to end, you know.
Yeah.
And the realization of that, it took me another few months to do it. But in those few months, I had various different conversations with people that I trusted. And then I came to that decision on my own, which was
Rock and roll.
the best thing. Share, my man, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave.
Good luck with everything. And I hope to see you and meet you in real life very
Yes,
soon.
mate. Hopefully, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure, mate.
Blessed.
Bye.